The Lagos Judicial Panel of Inquiry on Restitution for Victims of SARS-related Abuses has reported the Lekki tollgate shootings of October 20, 2020 as a massacre. The report, which was submitted to the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, added that police officers attempted to cover up the killing of protesters at the tollgate. The tribunal said at least 48 protesters were either shot dead, injured with bullet wounds, or assaulted by soldiers who stormed the Lekki tollgates as protesters peacefully gathered there last year. Arise correspondent Sheitan Atigari reports.
The Lagos Judicial Panel of Inquiry for the Restitution of Victims of SARS-related Abuses has presented the full report on their findings and recommendations to Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu.
The panel has, as we've seen, submitted two sets of reports, one being a consolidated report on general police brutality cases, which is by the panel, and another report specific on the report of the Lekki incident investigation of 20th October 2020. I'm going to constitute a four-man committee very immediately, which will be led and headed by the Honorable Attorney General, the Commissioner for Youth and Social Development, the Special Advisor Works, and the Permanent Secretary, the Cabinet Office. The four of them will very, very quickly look through and bring forward a white paper within the next 2 weeks that will be considered at the Lagos State Executive Council and will be gazetted as a white paper coming from the panel of inquiry.
The 309-page document revealed that at the Lekki tollgate, officers of the Nigerian Army shot, injured, and killed unarmed, helpless, and defenseless protesters without provocation or justification while they were waving the Nigerian flag and singing the national anthem, and the manner of assault and killing could in context be described as a massacre. The panel also found that the Nigerian police force deployed its officers to the Lekki tollgate on the night of the 20th, and between that night and the morning of the 21st of October, it shot at, assaulted, and battered unarmed protesters, which led to injuries and deaths. It further revealed that police officers also tried to cover up their actions by picking up bullets. The report also stated that the Lekki concession company manipulated the incomplete CCTV video footage of the Lekki tollgate in an attempt to cover up, as well as the failure to preserve the scene ahead of potential investigations. The panel made 32 recommendations, some which include sanctioning of the officers of the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Police Force who participated in shooting, injuring, and killing of unarmed protesters at the Lekki tollgate. A public apology to end-SARS protesters who were killed, injured, and traumatized by the incident. The memorialization of the Lekki tollgate and the 20th of October. The recognition of hospitals and medical doctors who played heroic roles by saving and minimizing the impact of the injuries suffered by the victims, most of which were on a pro bono basis. The panel recommended various sums of compensation to victims of the tollgate incident, which must be expeditious in order to accelerate the healing process. The report also had a list of 48 casualties and 13 individual petitions in relation to the Lekki tollgate investigation, in which petitioners alleged that they suffered varying degrees of injuries. As regards next steps, the governor awaits feedback from the four-man panel headed by the Attorney General, Moyosore Onigbajo-San, to consider the recommendations given by the Lagos Judicial Panel within the next 2 weeks. Sheitan Atigari, Arise News, Lagos.
Meanwhile, the United States government and other human rights groups, including Amnesty International and opposition People's Democratic Party, welcome the report and are calling for sanctions on those indicted. The UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator, Edward Callon, says the report will accelerate the process of justice and accountability. But the Lagos State government is not happy that the report was released without authorization amid claims that it was riddled with half-truths and inaccuracies. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Lekki, also forced the procedure adopted for the release of the report.
I should be asking you, I'm sure those of you in the media, you must have seen that there's a report that was released through, in my view, a wrong channel that is making it rounds in the social media. Whether it's a true report, I can't tell, but I'd like to indicate that the normal procedure is to have such a report submitted to the convening authority, and then there will be a white paper that will be presented based on which one can make informed comments. Now, whatever it is currently, I'd like to indicate that the armed forces of Nigeria is a professional armed forces. We are pupilled by Nigerians and we remain committed to constitutional mandates. We do not, at this point, think that Nigerians should make disparaging remarks regarding the armed forces of Nigeria in the sense that we are a professional armed forces. If there are issues, of course, we address them within the ambit of the provisions. It should not be right to disparage, men and women who have worked so hard to ensure that the territorial integrity of this nation is kept intact. So in the meantime, until I see the full extent of the report, I may not be able to. But I can assure you that the armed forces of Nigeria are disciplined, well disciplined, and we do not engage in any ignoble acts. So if Nigerians don't trust us, then we wouldn't have been doing what we're doing. In any case, it's the armed forces of Nigeria. And remember, we're not talking about the police, we're talking about the armed forces, with emphasis, armed forces. So when the armed forces are called out, it is because there's a need for the armed forces.
Joining us now to speak on this subject is Senior Advocate of Nigeria and human rights lawyer Femi Falana. Joining me right now is human rights lawyer Femi Falana, a senior advocate of Nigeria. You are welcome to the program, Mr. Femi Falana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Yes, it's good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to discuss this subject with us. What do you make of this end-SARS panel report, particularly the controversies that it has generated, and whether indeed what happened at the Lekki toll gate on October 2020 will amount to a massacre, which is one of the controversial points?
Well, Ruben, the panel of inquiry headed by the respected Justice Doris Okwobi defined massacre in the report and came to the conclusion that what happened in Lagos was a massacre. The basis of the conclusion is well set out in the report. All those who were alleged to have committed what can be regarded as crimes against humanity were given the opportunity to respond to those allegations, to defend themselves. Some of them ran away voluntarily. They had given evidence, and I'm talking of 4 military officers who gave oral and documentary evidence and tender a document that were admitted as exhibits. But when it came to challenging the evidence given by eyewitnesses, the relations of those who were killed, forensic experts, medical doctors, the Lagos State pathologists, the military officers and their lawyers, vamoosed, and the Judicial Commission of Inquiry came to the right decision that these guys ran away because they could not defend the allegations made against them. And that is what even a court of law will have done. But people forget the fact that this is a fact-finding commission of inquiry set up under the law. And Ruben, if you look at the credentials of the members, you cannot challenge their integrity. The chairperson, is not just a retired judge of the Lagos State High Court. She also rose to become the permanent secretary and solicitor general in the Ministry of Justice before she crossed to the bench. And throughout her career, no lawyer, no litigant ever associated her with corruption or corrupt influences. Some of the other members include Mr. Taiwo Lakanu, a retired Deputy Inspector General of Police. You think he will have sat down there while the army and the police are indicted for committing no offense? You also have a top official of the Ministry of Justice. I think she's the director of one of the agencies of the government. Of course, you have a senior advocate of Nigeria, Bade Boruwa, a former student leader representing the civil society. All the members were appointed by the government, including the secretary of the commission. But based on the irrefutable evidence adduced before them, it became difficult to cover up the findings. What they saw. But what is important, please, there isn't much of a controversy. Those who are raising queries, one of them took part as a lawyer, a senior lawyer in the panel of inquiry, on behalf of the Lagos State government, lost out. Now he's using his position in that panel as if he's speaking for the government of Lagos State. This is a former student leader who was part of the students in Nigeria that fought against police brutality as a student leader, not just an ordinary student. This lawyer was an activist in Ife. When 4 ABU students were massacred or killed in May 1986, I defended them. If you say your daughter was at the panel, at the protest ground, why did you not bring her to the Commission of Inquiry to give evidence to challenge or contradict the evidence of other eyewitnesses? So please, there isn't much of a controversy. What is happening, Ruben, is a dubious attempt to continue to cover up the atrocity that occurred on October 20 last year. But all they are saying, they are not denying the profound findings, the far-reaching recommendations. All they are saying is that, the number of those who died is not up to 9. How many died? Tell us. Didn't the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, before the commencement of the sittings of the panel, come out to tell the whole world that 2 people were killed? I also visited the hospitals to sympathize with those who were injured. Some of those who were injured came to the panel with their broken legs. Some of their legs have been amputated. For goodness sake, why are we trivializing a serious inquiry? Did anybody die? The chief pathologist of Lagos State gave evidence and said in 5 days, 99 bodies of human beings, 99 bodies of those who were killed were dumped in the various mortuaries, in the morgue, by security personnel, soldiers and policemen. And that in the early hours of the 21st, there was a cleanup exercise by LOMA, the Lagos State Waste Management Agency. That is the evidence. That has not been challenged.
Well, Mr. Falana.
I know somebody is now saying, pretends to be an intellectual. Oh, how could you have found expired shell at the venue when you claim that the place had been cleaned up? That is a genuine argument.
Well, Mr. Falana.
Because even after the visit of the panel to the local Cinco, government officials went there, including the Minister of Works, a former governor of the state, Mr. Fashola, Babatunde Fashola, a senior advocate of Nigeria, who said, I pick up a camera at the venue. So what are you talking about? Oh,
well, Mr. Falana.
The place had been cleaned up.
Mr. Falana.
Yes.
I said there was a controversy that is controversial because if you look at it, AJ Owonikoko SAN, who is the counsel to the Lagos State government that you're referring to, alluded to the fact that there were at least 40 discrepancies in the report that is out there.
Did he tell you the 40 discrepancies?
Well,
no.
Well, I think I saw a document in which he listed some of them. Then today, in this day newspaper.
No, what are they? It hasn't listed 40 discrepancies.
Well, today at page.
It's a senior advocate of Nigeria.
At pages 24 and 49 of this day newspaper today, a certain Dr. Abubakar Yekini, I think, lists 29 discrepancies in his own, objection. Now, on the other hand, you have Ebolu Adeborua, SAN, who is saying, look, if that report is not acted upon, he will release another report. Is there a problem of procedure here, with everybody coming up with their own reports? What is the exact report that the Lagos State government has in its possession? Is it normal for members of panel or third parties to come up with a report when the authority to put a white paper together rests with the state government?
Well, with profound respect to some of these guys, the said Dr. Abubakar Yekini is a lecturer at the Lagos State University. You must know where some of these persons are coming from. But with profound respect, they have not challenged the fact that people were killed. Their quarrel is, let us establish discrepancies. Some of them are figments of their imagination so that we can discredit the report. I am saying, Ruben, let us forget the panel. The governor of Lagos State said 2 people were killed. The chief pathologist of the state said out of the 99 bodies, 3 were traced to Lekki Tollgate. The SEC, an agency of the Lagos State government that was indicted for a cover-up of the incident, issued a statement on the 21st of October, having captured the scene through the CCTV cameras, before those cameras were disabled. And the statement is to the effect that LCC, an agency of the Lagos State government, condemned the wanton killing of protesters. The statement was admitted in evidence. Now, where is the controversy coming from, Ruben? That people were not killed? How many were killed? If you are saying, oh, they didn't kill up to 9. How many were killed? Ruben, in 1986, a vice chancellor was asked, the vice chancellor of ABU, Professor Angu Abdullahi, we understand some students were killed in your university. How many of them? He said only 4 students were killed. That statement, Ruben, made at the 9 o'clock, during the 9 o'clock news of the NTA, led to a spontaneous, reaction by students throughout the country, throughout the length and breadth of the country. A judicial commission of inquiry was set up, headed by the late Justice Adebayo Akonbi of the Court of Appeal. We went to 10 campuses to investigate. What happened, Ruben? The report was not released tomorrow because the government was indicted. Now, the report leaked. The report of the Oputa panel of inquiry, the Obasanjo regime did not release it. It leaked. The report of the Kayode Esho panel on corrupt judges under the Abacha junta was not released. It leaked. In fact, two of the leaked reports were published by the news magazine. The one of Esho panel and the one of Justice Akonbi. Heavens did not fall. So it is not the first time that a report submitted to government is leaking now. But it's leaking. I told you, I'm published by the media. But let me tell you something, which is very fundamental. Where soldiers are just listening to the Chief of Defense Staff, and he made the point. The armed forces is trying the word armed. Soldiers are not sent to the scene of a crisis to clap there. They go there to kill. You have and that's the point he was making. We're called. You don't call soldiers to stop a protest, which is peaceful in every material particular. So, when soldiers, there are 3 judgments, Ruben, obtained by the APC as a political party when it was in opposition, where the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal declare illegal the involvement of soldiers in civil matters like election, maintenance of law and order. In 2019, in the case of Femi Falana and Nigerian Army, I obtained a judgment where the court declared illegal and unconstitutional the move by the army to subject Nigerians to embarrassment on the highway by asking us to produce our ID cards, and so on and so forth. So those judgments remain unchallenged. So in other words, under no circumstance, Ruben, can soldiers be sent can soldiers be deployed to areas where civilians are protesting, who are unarmed? In any case, and the panel made this finding, that the Lagos State government requested for the military. Yes, but the panel didn't go further to say that by virtue of Section 217 of the Constitution, only the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces can deploy troops in Nigeria. Not a governor, not the Chief of Army Staff. But during your interview, when you granted, the President spoke through the Arise television. You interviewed the President this year. And he said, the end-SARS protesters wanted to overthrow my government. For me, if you consider what happened seriously, and the disclosure by the President, the soldiers were sent there to kill so as not to overthrow the government. That was the rumor. That was misinformation, passed to the President. Hence, when the President gave a speech last year, a broadcast. He simply said, we have heard you loud and clear. We are attending to your demands. But the president was later told by those who wanted to justify the illegal deployment of troops. Oh, they wanted to overthrow your government. In the case of the police, Ruben, there are two laws. The Electoral Act 2010 as amended in 2015 and the Police Establishment Act 2020 that have provided that during protest, the police shall provide security for the protesters. Ruben, if the law has been followed last year and the police had surrounded the Lekki toll gate area and Alausa, where the young people were protesting, the question of hoodlums hijacking the protest will not have arisen. But even what is this hijacking, Ruben? The people that are called hoodlums are area boys in peacetime. They are thugs during election. They are hoodlums during protest. And who are in charge, who recruit thugs during election? The government, politicians. During protest, during the last protest, don't forget, violence was unleashed on the young people in Alausa. Rented buses unleashed violence. In Abuja, the whole world saw thugs, armed thugs, shooting at protesters in broad daylight. You know what the young people did? They arrested some of them, handed them over to the police. The police did not prosecute them. So unfortunately, Ruben, other hoodlums and thugs saw a free reign for thuggery and violence. So they came out, engaged in the burning of houses, public and private buildings. They went to prison to set free their colleagues. And what happened? And they also killed, including policemen who were on duty. And the government turned around, hoodlums hijacked the protest. Who recruited the hoodlums? Please, let us not miss the point that the army has no business under the Constitution to get involved in the maintenance of law and order. Secondly, that the police has a duty, the Nigerian police force has a duty to protect protesters so that they are not attacked by hoodlums, so that hoodlums will not hijack peaceful protest. That is the law. All these people are racing.
Mr. Falana, aren't there
So-called controversies have not addressed these very salient points.
Anyway, Mr. Falana, aren't there extraordinary circumstances when the military can be called out in aid of civil force? Maybe that's what happened in this particular case.
Under Section 217,
yes,
the police, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, can deploy troops when it is evident that the civil authorities, in this case the police, can no longer maintain law and order. Are you saying, Ruben, that in a place where young people were singing the national anthem, right, waving Nigerian flags, can you deploy troops to go and mow them down? No. That is not one of those cases where the military can be brought in. The military cannot be brought in to attack unarmed protesters, even during a war. You must understand, Ruben, that the Geneva Conventions have been domesticated in Nigeria. So we have the Geneva Convention Act of 1961, which provides, even in a war situation, you don't attack civilian targets. You don't attack unarmed people. So, and that is why the rules of engagement drawn up by military authorities to guide the conduct of soldiers, even during hostilities, were completely breached. And that was why the military could not justify what they did. Initially, they said, we were never there at all. And the Attorney General of the Federation, Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Salami, because the government could not justify, they were not Nigerian soldiers. Those are likely to be thought who put on military uniform. The minister of, another minister, Minister of Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, said about 5 times now, soldiers were not at Lekki, no killing took place there. So that is the position. And it was when the young people, the protesters, brought out irrefutable digital evidence showing soldiers who were shooting. It was at that juncture that, we were there. The soldiers, the military now said we were there. But we're only there to disperse the protesters, and we shot into the air. For goodness sake, under what constitutional right, power, what constitutional power are you exercising to go to Lekki toll gate and shoot at protesters? So these are issues that cannot be covered up by those who are raising unnecessary controversies with a view to discrediting the report, so that when the white paper is released, they had already said it that there are discrepancies. But let me warn you, those guys are weeping more than the bereaved. In fairness to the Lagos state government, note this: Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has acknowledged that people were killed, whether he admitted 2. The panel has said no. We find 9 that were killed. The panel, the Lagos state government, in fairness to, I must commend the government for this. Even while the panel was sitting, based on the implicit confidence the governor has in the members of the panel, unlike other commissions of inquiry in the country, the Lagos state government directed the panel, please, award compensation, give reparation to victims in deserving cases. That panel has already awarded a total sum of 409 million naira as compensation to victims of police brutality in Lagos state. Furthermore, the Lagos state governor has visited the homes of the 6 policemen that lost their lives, who were killed by hoodlums, gave 10 million naira to each of the families, and promised to ensure and offer scholarship to the children of these slain police officers up to university level. So, and I also can tell you this: there was a spy policeman that was killed. The family went to the panel. No, our terms of reference did not cover this type of complaint. Our law firm wrote to the governor, in fairness to the Lagos state government, again creditably, the governor ordered that the widow of the spy police man be compensated. That has happened. So the point I'm making, therefore, is that the Lagos state government is already implementing part of the report, the recommendations, and final one, which is very, very important. I did say publicly that the cause of the massacre at that time was because the police did not have canisters of tear gas. The police did not have water cannon and rubber bullets. I can tell you today, and I'm happy, the Lagos state government has since acquired those crowd control measures. Since the incident of last year, only 1 person has been killed by a stray bullet at Toyota during the Yoruba Nation rally. And an inquiry is going on. We are representing the mother of the deceased at the coroner's inquest. This morning, I have just read that the Lagos state government has rented an apartment for the mother of the deceased, even while the inquiry has not been concluded. So the point I'm making, therefore, is that contrary to the so-called controversy, the Lagos state government is already implementing the recommendations. And I can't see the government. And you know what the white paper is all about, Ruben? A white paper usually contains the directives of the government on the recommendations. The government does not, as a practice, release the report of judicial and administrative commissions of inquiry. That is not to justify the leakage of the report. But I have said, this is not the first time reports of inquiry have been leaked in Nigeria. It is to ensure that there is no cover-up by the government. That's all. No more, no less.
Okay, Mr. Falana, it's good you brought up the point about the widow of the spy policeman who went to the panel, and she was told, well, you know, that did not it was not included in their terms of reference, because that was the last point. That was the last point raised by Dr. Yekini in his piece today in This Day, specifically at page 49. He said, look, the panel did not even spare a word for policemen who were slain, people who lost their loved ones within the security agencies. But you've helped to shed some light on that. However, out of all the recommendations, 32 of them, 32 recommendations by the panel, which recommendations do you think are more urgent? And I'm thinking in this regard of the recommendation that all officers of state involved in that massacre should all be sanctioned. And beyond the police and the military officers, should this include persons like the Minister of Information? Should it also include Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, who was the Chief of Defense Staff at the time and who has since been rewarded with an ambassadorial appointment?
Well, as far as the law is concerned, the government is bound to restrict itself to the recommendations of the panel. I've read the report. There is nowhere any reference was made to the former immediate past Chief of Army Staff, General Buratai. It's likely to, very soon, is going to attend to the brutal killing of 348 people in Zaria between December 12 and 14, 2015, who were not only killed, they were given a secret burial in an unmarked grave. That is before the International Criminal Court. In this case, it depends on the way both the Lagos state government and the federal government handle the recommendations. If for any reason the recommendations of the panel are poo-pooed and nothing happens at the end of the day, that will not be the end of the matter. The ICC is there. And right now, Ruben, I'm involved in a number of cases of transitional justice in Africa. President Thomas Sankara, that was killed 34 years ago, and everybody had forgotten about it. Just last month, the trial of those who killed him, including ex-president Blaise Compaoré, commenced in Ouagadougou. In the case of President Yahya Jammeh, the human rights community, global human rights community, representatives just had a meeting in Banjul last week to get ourselves prepared for the release of the report of the Commission of Inquiry ongoing in that country. I'm sure you are aware President Charles Taylor is languishing in prison in Europe for crimes against humanity committed years ago in Sierra Leone and Liberia. Of course, ex-president Isle Abri of Chad, who killed about 4,000 people, was convicted in Senegal and jailed, I think sentenced to life imprisonment. He passed on a few months ago. So there is no room for impunity when it comes to crimes against humanity, aggression, and other similar offenses. So, whatever the government does with this report, I can assure you, there can be no cover-up any longer. And in this case, the white paper cannot, with profound respect to the members, vitiate or impugn or question the findings because the panel members listen to the witnesses. So you can't sit down in the office of the government and be rubbishing the report. What the government is asked to do with respect to these recommendations, what do? If the government is not prepared to recommend prosecution, there is a right of private prosecution. So you can trust the end-SARS protest movement. The end-SARS movement has already set up a panel of lawyers, and they are working with the People's Alternative Political Movement to ensure that everybody recommended for prosecution is brought to book. Secondly, the panel could not complete the assignment because it was monumental. So out of 252 petitions, the panel was only able to deal with 186. So the panel has recommended that the government of Lagos State should set up a standing human rights committee to attend to these other petitions. And I'm sure that will be done because that recommendation is in line with the resolution of the National Economic Council, of which the governor of Lagos State is a member. That body said in each of the states, just like the National Human Rights Commission in Abuja, we should have a standing human rights committee. And so the committee is going to deal with the remaining petitions. So there is no way the government can abandon the recommendation. They are so fundamental. And in fairness to the governor, he has said, with the report of, the emergence of the white paper, proper healing will start. And you can't have proper healing if there is any attempt to cover up the findings of the panel.
Okay, Mr. Falana, there are two other issues I'd like to bring up with you, also of national interest. Igbo leaders met with President Buhari a few days ago, and the main subject of discussion was the need to find a political solution to the continued trial of Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous peoples of Biafra. And the president said, well, he will look into the request. But in any case, he would not want to interfere with the judiciary or violate the principle of separation of power. But can the president take a decision within the purview of Section 174 by directing the Attorney General of the Federation to enter a nolle prosequi?
Well, thank you very much. You will recall that a couple of weeks back, the Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Abubakar Malami, did indicate that the cases of Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Adeyemo,
Sunday
Igboho might be resolved politically. In the case of Kanu, frankly speaking, the charges can hardly be proved. One of the counts is sedition. Sedition was pronounced illegal and unconstitutional in 1983 in the case of Arthur Nwankwo and the state. So I don't know, I can't see how some of those charges will stand in law. So the choice before the government is to have this matter resolved politically. In the case of Sunday Igboho, the government has not filed a request in the Benin court for his extradition. So I believe the government is also taking its time to resolve this matter politically. More so that the High Court in Oyo State has said that organizing rallies to demand for demand for self-determination is not illegal under our law. So I believe the government has no choice but to resolve these matters politically. More so that the IPOB could be said to have extended the only branch to the government with respect to the gubernatorial election just concluded in Anambra State. If IPOB had not suspended hostilities in that state, there's no way you could have had the election. So I believe the government has taken cognizance of all the facts and circumstances of these cases and has therefore resolved to handle them politically. With respect to Section 174, the Attorney General does not need to take instructions from the President having regard to the state of the law. The Constitution has empowered him to discontinue any case at any state in the public interest. And this case suggests that the government has to intervene. If the Attorney General does not even exercise his powers, the President can, under Section 175 of the Constitution, grant amnesty. And that has happened before. I defended Henry Oka, who was charged. I think it was a 62-count charge. We raised a plenary objection against 59 of the 62-count charge. We won. The remaining 3, we also raised an objection. It was at that stage that the late President Umaru Yar'Adua asked for political resolution. And so that was how we resolved that case. And the guy, Henry Oka, was quite influential among the militants. So he was the one that went from one camp to the other to preach, peace. And that was how the Niger Delta militants decided to give peace a chance. I believe if the same approach is adopted by the government this time, we also can have the restoration of law and order in the southeast, in the southwest. But the government must be ready to engage and look at the circumstances that led these young people to declare a war against the neo-colonial state of Nigeria. So that's my own position on the matter. So the government has to move very speedily.
Well, finally, Mr. Falana, we have just about 3 or 4 minutes to go. What do you think of Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's first visit to Africa? The shuttle from Kenya to Nigeria to Senegal, and with him telling the Nigerian authorities that the U.S. may have no option but to invoke the Legality law against Nigeria. Should it be established that Nigeria is guilty of human rights abuses? And this is coming just after the U.S. had removed Nigeria from the 2021 list of religious rights violators.
Well, Ruben, yes, I read the speech of the U.S. Secretary of State. Frankly speaking, I believe the struggle to ensure that human rights are respected in Nigeria is that of the Nigerian people to wage. And I'm delighted, personally, that our young people are prepared more than ever before to align themselves with progressive forces in Nigeria to ensure that human rights are respected in our country. All that the friends of Nigeria can do is to support the struggle of the Nigerian people. The United States of America, the United Kingdom and others will not fight for Nigeria. And our experience has borne this out. In all seriousness, these countries are worried, and that emerged in the speech of the Secretary of State, that we are worried that in the last 1 year, about 4 governments have been overthrown in Africa, that we're having a resurgence of military rule, and that Africans must ensure that we put an end to this disturbing phenomenon. Nigeria has a role to play, and that authoritarian rule by civilian governments often lead to frustration, and frustrations of the populace is often exploited by adventurers in military uniform to stay course. So if we do not want the democratic process disrupted, the governments in Africa must embrace democracy, must arrest authoritarian rule, must address impunity, official impunity, and more importantly, must address the economic crisis confronting the country. And this time around, the government of Nigeria must be prepared to reject in toto the deleterious suggestions by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to cause major popular protest, to incite the people against the government by asking the government continue to devalue the national currency, remove subsidies from electricity and fuel, and operate neoliberal economic policies that will aggravate poverty in the country. Whereas in their own countries, in the West, the government is giving, from time to time, subsidies to the weak and the vulnerable. President Trump, a stout defender of the status quo and enemy of the masses in America, gave out twice over $2 trillion by way of palliatives. President Joe Biden has just ensured that the Congress pass a budget that will put money, some money, in the pockets of the poor and the vulnerable. Therefore, those who are not criticizing the United States of America, the bastion of capitalism, for giving subsidy to the poor, cannot be allowed to come here and incite our government to cancel subsidies meant for the poor to alleviate poverty in the country. So, for me, the Secretary of State of the United States has given a good speech to sustain the status quo. It's now left for the government to react. But as I said, the struggle to institutionalize democracy in Nigeria, the struggle for the control of our national economy, the struggle for equitable distribution of the Commonwealth is for Nigerians to wage. No country will wage this struggle for us. Thank you very much.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Mr. Femi Falana, SAN, for joining us on today's edition of This is Live, the Sunday Talk Show.